The greatest general in the Imperium of Man is currently sitting in a jar on a Necron tomb world. He has been there since Cadia fell. He is alive. Nobody is coming for him. The man who held Hades' hive against 1,000,000 orcs was released, armed, in a vehicle, by the warlord who took his arm, because the orc respected him more than the Imperium ever did. And the third one? He keeps trying to run away. He just can't seem to manage it. 3 men, 2 legends, 1 open question the Imperium refuses to answer. Which one was actually the most dangerous? Is it the iron-willed martyr, the tactical god, or the terrified imposter who couldn't stop accidentally saving the galaxy? The Imperium produces heroes the way a hive city produces corpses, constantly, indiscriminately, and mostly by accident. You don't become a legend in the 41st millennium by trying. You become one by surviving long enough that people stop counting the ways you should have died. His full name is Sebastian Yarrick. Most people just call him the Old Man of Armageddon. The orcs call him something that translates roughly to the one who does not fall, which is less a name and more a warning they give themselves. He was already old when Ghazkul's first wah hit Armageddon. Not old like a retired general who gives speeches at galas. Old like something worn smooth by too many wars. He had the kind of face commissars develop after witnessing oceans of blood. A face that says executing a coward no longer feels like discipline. It just feels like adding to the total. When the Second War for Armageddon began, Yarrick was dispatched to Hades' hive, not because it was strategically critical, because Hermann von Straub, the overlord of Armageddon, a man so catastrophically incompetent he almost makes Cain's self-deprecation look like modesty, sent Yarrick there specifically as punishment. Von Straub had grown tired of Yarrick ignoring his authority. This is the kind of decision that earns its own paragraph in history books under things that backfired completely. Hades' hive had 11 million inhabitants and roughly 0 reinforcements. Ghazkul sent everything. The numbers don't translate cleanly to a human scale. Think less battle and more extinction event with opinions. The hive held. Not because the walls were strong, because one old man stood on them and refused to accept the alternative. Here is the detail nobody talks about. In a siege that should have broken every soldier inside, Yarrick executed 0 troops for cowardice. None. In a setting where commissars routinely shoot their own men for hesitating, the hero of Hades' hive kept morale without terror through something far more unsettling. Actual belief that they could win. That is either remarkable leadership or the most dangerous thing a human being can do in the 41st millennium. An orc war boss named Ugelhard eventually took Yarrick's arm with a power claw. Yarrick killed him with his chainsword using his remaining hand, pulled the power claw from the corpse, and had it grafted directly to his nervous system. The procedure had a low survival rate. He presumably acknowledged this information and then stopped listening. The Baali came later, a laser bionic that replaced the one he lost. A focused beam of concentrated refusal, essentially. It is exactly as subtle as a man who named himself the hero of Armageddon would choose. But here is the part that rewrites everything you think you know about Yarrick. 3 years after the Second War, Yarrick launched a purge campaign against orc raiders. On a planet called Golgotha, the campaign found him instead. He was captured, enslaved aboard Ghazkul's Space Hulk, led a failed revolt, and ended up in chains. Then Ghazkul looked at him and let him go. A shuttle. His weapons. Because good enemies were hard to find. Ghazkul issued a standing order. No orc was permitted to kill Yarrick except Ghazkul himself. Yarrick had achieved something most Imperial heroes never manage. He had become the reason his enemy kept fighting. He wasn't an obstacle. He was the point. A commissar, beloved by orcs. The 41st millennium is that kind of place. By then, Yarrick was old, in the way that things made of iron get old. Surface damage, no structural failure. He was running a crusade across orc-held space trying to find Gazkul when the 13th Black Crusade began. He didn't make it back in time. Cadia burned without him. Ursarkar E. Creed was not, by appearance, a legendary figure. He was short, stocky, and spent most of his career being described as unremarkable by people who were subsequently outsmarted by him. He was the Lord Castellan of Cadia, which sounds like a title someone invents when they want to feel important, but in practice meant he was responsible for the single most strategically vital planet in the Imperium, the Eye of Terror's Gate. The thing standing between Abaddon the Despoiler and everything else humanity had ever built. Creed was a tactician the way a siege cannon is a negotiation tool. Technically, it fits the category, but the scale of what he could do with it redefined the word entirely. He hid titans, not metaphorically, actual Titan-class war engines. The largest walking weapons platforms the Imperium builds, machines the size of hab blocks that shake the ground with every step, concealed in positions where it was geometrically impossible for them to be. His enemies prepared for engagements based on terrain, logistics, and physics. Then Creed would produce an armored column from a direction that should have been solid wall. This is the military equivalent of someone pulling a live elephant from a deck of cards, except the elephant has a volcano cannon, and your entire left flank is gone. His greatest tactical asset wasn't his mind. It was Jaren Kell. Creed would murmur adjustments, quiet, precise, the voice of someone doing arithmetic, and Kell would translate those murmurs into roaring, immediate orders that moved thousands of men. Creed thought. Kell shouted, "The Imperium won! Cadia held for 12 Black Crusades." 12 times Abaddon brought everything he had, and 12 times Creed's world told him no. The 13th was different. Not because Creed made a mistake, because Abaddon crashed a blackstone fortress, the Will of Eternity, directly into Cadia's surface, an artificial meteor. It destroyed the Cadian pylons and cracked the planet open. The 13th Black Crusade ended not with tactics, but with a moon thrown at the problem. Creed oversaw the evacuation, the last transports. The kind of moment where a man stands on a dock watching the last ship leave and decides whether he's getting on it or not. He didn't get on it. What happened next is where Creed's story gets complicated. Trazyn the Infinite was on Cadia when it fell. The Necron Archaeovist, obsessive collector of irreplaceable things is the short version, watched the last moments of the fortress world and made a decision. He captured Creed in a tesseract labyrinth in the final seconds before the planet broke. Creed is currently stored on Solemnace, Trazyn's tomb world, alive, preserved, suspended. The greatest military mind in the Imperium is a tchotchke on a Necron shelf. He sits alongside whatever else Trazyn considers worth keeping. Extinct species, ancient weapons, things that no longer exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Whether this was salvation or the deepest possible humiliation depends entirely on your definition of victory. Trazyn would tell you it was both. He would also tell you that Creed should be grateful. He would be serious. The Imperium lists him as missing in action. No one is negotiating for his release. You cannot negotiate with Trazyn. The Imperium does not negotiate with Necrons as policy. The greatest general alive is on a shelf somewhere, and the institution he served is pretending he simply stopped existing. Priorities. If you handed Ciaphas Cain a medal, his first instinct would be to check if it was rigged to explode. That paranoia is the core of his existence, and exactly what kept him alive. He is, by his own account, a commissar of exceptional mediocrity who survived a staggering number of impossible situations through a combination of luck, instinct, and the proximity of a man named Jurgen. Jurgen is a blank, a psychic null, no presence in the warp. He smells. He is socially impenetrable. He is also the most useful aide any commissar has ever had, because every psyker, demon, and chaos sorcerer Cain encountered had their powers simply stop working the moment Jurgen was nearby. Cain describes Jurgen as a liability who happened to be loyal. The evidence suggests Cain built his entire career on having the one human in the galaxy who functioned as a walking negation field standing next to him at all critical moments. Whether this was strategic or luck, Cain never says, which is its own kind of answer. Here is what we actually know. Cain survived the siege of Perlia. He stumbled through Necron tombs on Simia or Ciaphas. He somehow outran Tyrannid Hive tyrants and talked his way out of a Dark Eldar raid, all across a career spanning well over a century. He stumbled into Genestealer cult infiltrations with a frequency that statisticians would classify as impossible rather than merely improbable, and disrupted every single one of them. He was present at engagements that should have killed everyone involved and left under his own power. He claims he was running away, toward the exits, which happened to be in the direction of the enemy. Every time. The Ciaphas Cain series is his memoir, edited after his death by Inquisitor Amberly Vale, an inquisitor who by all evidence loved him and who had every professional reason to shape the narrative in a direction that made him seem both useful and non-threatening to the Inquisition. Everything you know about Cain came through two filters: his own insistence that he was a coward and a woman who disagreed with him, choosing what to keep. Yarrick's legend was witnessed by 11 million people and confirmed by Ghazghkull. Creed's genius is documented in after-action reports across 12 crusades. Cain's heroism exists in a document he wrote to explain why he wasn't heroic. The question is never resolved, whether Cain was genuinely terrified each time, or whether fear was the only way a man with real courage could survive a universe that kept demanding proof. There is no answer in the text. That is the crack the whole story runs on. Yarrick chose to be what he is. He dragged himself toward the orc lines. He stayed awake while a Xenos claw was bolted to his nervous system. When everyone else broke, the old man held the wall. Every part of his legend is a deliberate act of will, and when Ghazghkull released him, he went straight back into it. Creed built his reputation with decades of preparation, tactical study, and the construction of a system, himself, Kel, Cadia, that was optimized for exactly one purpose. He was a professional. He knew what he was building. He chose it. Cain kept ending up heroic despite himself. He planned to leave. He left in the wrong direction. He planned to hide. He hid next to the objective. He tried to be forgettable and became the most decorated commissar of his generation. Two men chose their legends. One was chosen by his. There is an argument to be made, and the narrator is making it, that Cain is the most terrifying of the three. Not because he was the bravest, because he couldn't stop. Yarrick could theoretically have walked away from Armageddon. Creed could theoretically have gotten on that last ship. Cain tried, repeatedly, systematically, across a century, and the universe kept routing him back. You can admire a man who chooses to be a hero. You can study a man who builds himself into one. But a man who genuinely cannot stop being heroic no matter the direction he points himself, that is something else. That is either a miracle or a curse. In the 41st millennium, those are the same category. Yarrick and Ghazghkull will probably find each other again. That story isn't finished. It just changes scale every time they meet. Creed is in a jar, alive, waiting for something that may never come. Cain died old, past 2 centuries with rejuvenate treatments keeping him functional. In the 41st millennium, that is either fortune or punishment. 2 legends. One man who probably just wanted a quiet desk posting somewhere. The Imperium got all 3 of them. It needed everyone. It would never admit which one it needed most. Tell me in the comments, Cain, coward with luck or hero who couldn't stop? If you've read the books, you already know. If you haven't, subscribe. We're gonna make that worse.